The 5 stages of debt. Which one gets our clients into the most trouble? Scott Terrio and I will give our opinions starting right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
We're all familiar with the 5 stages of grief, first introduced in a book in 1969 by Swiss-American psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Today we're going to talk about the 5 stages of debt. Of course, human beings are complex and no one goes through each of the 5 stages in order. Some people skip stages, but people do progress through these stages when dealing with debt. So to discuss it, I'm here with Scott Terrio in our Hoyes Michaelis Toronto office. Scott, ready to go?
Yeah, for sure.
So the first of the 5 stages, well, I'll tell everyone what the 5 stages are. I mean, I'm sure you all know them, but denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Those are the 5 stages. And, and as I said, it's not exact. This is obviously to deal with grief as opposed to debt, but there are some parallels. And I guess what we're really talking about is the life cycle of kind of the bankruptcy process or the debt realization progress. So the first step, and in fact, the first few steps are before people even come to see us. So the first step is denial. I think there's a joke about a river in Egypt that somehow relates to that. But so this is the stage where people say, you know what, I don't really have a problem. I'm good.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of this, reading through this stuff yesterday, it makes a lot of sense with what you and I and all the other, people who meet with clients in our firm experience every day, which is every single person that I've met with in 11 years in this business has said, I should have come to see you 12 to 24 months earlier. And when you think of that, this kind of explains why, right? Because how do you get 12 or 24 months under your belt once you've been in financial trouble by the time you get into our office?
Well, and let's think about that because that's a critical point. And, there are some people at 6 months, but you're right.
Oh, yeah.
There's a time frame.
Yeah.
So something happens is usually what happens with our clients. They lose their job, they get sick, divorced, some kind of triggering event. But the day you lose your job, it's not like, well, I better go bankrupt now. That's not how it works because I've still got some money in the bank. I'm going to be getting EI for a while. So I start to use credit perhaps to survive. And then a period of time goes on. And then like you say, it's 6 months, 12 months, 24 months before they come in. So it's during that initial period we're talking about where people say, you know what, I'm good. I'll probably get another job tomorrow.
Yeah. And it's human nature too, to kind of, not make a mountain out of what at that point probably appears to be a molehill. Right? But at some point it's going to be bad. It's just not bad yet, right?
Yeah, and we suffer from recency bias, so we assume that yesterday will be the same as today and tomorrow. We can't think well into the future.
So much science here.
Oh, there you go. So is he making these terms up or is it real? So is it just cognitive dissonance? Yeah, we'll talk about that some other time. Okay, so the second stage then is anger.
Right.
So someone realizes, okay, I do have a problem. And then they start, getting all upset about it. Who are the typical people that our clients are getting upset with?
Well, okay. So once you start, what is causing the upset here is somebody trying to get money from you. So you owe a whole bunch of money on various credit cards or whatever. And, typically it's collection calls. So either it's the bank internally or the bank has farmed it out to a collection agency or something like that. It could be CRA. But the calls are harassing. They're constant. They pick up in intensity and frequency. And a lot of clients that come into us, that's why they look as stressed as they are. It's very psychosomatic, this stuff, right? It eats at you. You don't sleep. You look terrible. You look like you're 10 years older than you are. And so, more science that, your mind can really affect your body. And that's proven by the fact that when we have people come in after they sign a proposal of bankruptcy for their counseling sessions or whatever, a month, 6 months later, they look different. Like it's incredible in some cases. Some people don't look a lot different, but some people are just a remarkable transformation.
Yeah, and I totally agree that reality is all up here.
Yeah.
Now, okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit because if a piano was to fall on my head, I couldn't think my way out of it.
Right.
We could try that experiment, I guess, to find out for sure. But there's no doubt that what's happening externally affects you. And you're right. It's the collection agents is the obvious manifestation of that.
Yeah, and I think there's also I wanted to mention this term, a feedback loop here, where collectors call you, you retreat further and further from reality, because a lot of people they can't handle that. And I see why. I mean, if your phone's ringing constantly and they threaten all kinds of things, right? As we know, we've heard some terrible stuff that most of which they can't do. And you explain to people, well, if collectors are calling you, it's because they can't actually do anything to you. Like they'd rather get money from you. So that's the first stage, right? Is they call you like crazy because they can't either garnish your wages so they're doing that first to try and get you to crack and pay them. But that's stressful, and it makes you retreat worse. And I think it just prolongs the situation even more.
Yeah. And we live in a technology world now. So number one, we all carry our phones with you. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the phone was at home. If I was at work, at least I didn't hear it ringing.
8 hours where you didn't get any feedback or information about that. Right. Now,
whereas now
it's sitting on your desk.
Yeah, or clipped to your pocket or whatever.
Right.
So, and then the other thing, there's technology on the other side, the robocallers.
Yeah.
So people come in here and go, they're calling me every hour. Yeah. Well, they actually aren't. There's a robo dialer that sets it up. It calls you. If you don't answer, it puts you back on the list and calls you again.
Yep.
So you think that there's somebody on the other end really freaking out, calling you. No.
Yeah, it's very impersonal.
Yeah, and you can tell when you pick up the phone that there's nobody there.
There's
it takes
a pause.
10 seconds, and then a human being comes on.
Yeah.
And they said, hello, is this Mr. Terrio?
Yeah, they pronounce your name wrong.
Yeah, that's me, all
stuff.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that, I think you're right, creates the anger. So then the third stage is bargaining.
Right.
So, okay, I understand I'm in trouble and I'm mad at these people, but maybe I can work my way out of it.
Yeah.
This is, I think, the most dangerous step, because this is where you make bad decisions.
Yeah.
So give me some examples of bad decisions people make during the bargaining phase.
Right. So example now, they say, okay, I'm gonna try and tackle this myself somehow. All right. So, you kind of cast about for various solutions. Cash your RSPs. Okay, this is the one we probably see the most. And the issue with it is, unless you cash a whole bunch, you don't get much on the end of it, because you get taxed, and then you get taxed as income later. And then what happens is you end up with a tax debt you didn't have before, but it wasn't enough. The cashing out wasn't enough to actually solve the problem. So you've kind of added another problem to the situation by doing that oftentimes.
Yeah. And let's be very specific about what you're saying. Yeah. So I've got $10,000 in my RSP.
Right.
Let's say $20,000, $30,000, $40,000.
Yeah.
And I cash it in. Right. I go to the bank and they say, oh, well, if you take out more than $5,000, so take it out in $5,000 increments. Right. I only pay 10% withholding tax.
Right.
At the end of the year, all of those $5,000 adds up to $50,000 in income,
right.
And that is added to whatever my income from my jobs are.
So it might push you into a higher tax bracket.
It almost
for
sure does.
Yeah, in fact, it almost has to.
And so it could push you. Let's say it pushes you into the 50% bracket,
right.
But they only took off 10%.
Right.
So now you owe another $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in taxes,
and you didn't pay off all your debt.
all your debt. Yeah. So if you've got $20,000 in debt, you may need to take $40,000 out of your RSP to pay it.
Yeah, it might exactly. It might actually be better to be over aggressive, pay the whole debt off, owe some tax later. Even that's not ideal, because you still have debt, right? And I don't think anybody gets very good, or people don't generally get very good advice on this stuff.
And so let's give them some good advice here then.
Right.
The reason we're harping on RSPs is because if you go bankrupt, you, in most cases, don't lose your RSP. Yeah. What happens in a bankruptcy?
Right. So bankruptcy, our RSPs are fully exempt in a bankruptcy except your last 12 months contributions. Now, most of the people we're seeing haven't made last 12 contributions unless they've come off their pay automatically. If they have a private RSP, they're not in that situation.
And by fully exempt, you're using big words here.
You can file a bankruptcy and we don't touch your RSP.
We don't take it.
Doesn't matter how much you have in there.
Yeah.
It does. The numbers don't matter as long as you haven't contributed in the last 12 months, fully exempt. So you can get discharged from your bankruptcy and the trustee doesn't touch your RSP.
And so the people who are contributing are people who perhaps have a plan through work, or they're set up on an automatic payment plan where I'm putting in a couple $100 every month.
Yeah, right.
So yes, anything you've contributed in the last 12 months. So from a practical point of view, if someone comes in to see you and says, yeah, I've got this plan that I'm contributing to every month, then our first piece of advice is stop contributing.
Yeah, stop contributing.
And because if you wait a month before you do your bankruptcy. Well, now there's only 11 months worth of contributions in the last year. Wait 2 or 3 months.
Exactly, yeah.
So those are obvious planning points.
Right.
Now, most of the time we're doing proposals, not bankruptcies.
Right.
So why did what we just say about RSPs and bankruptcies matter if we're doing a proposal?
Right. So in a proposal, none of your assets are in play as they are in a bankruptcy, but the calculation of the hypothetical bankruptcy is what determines what your proposal will be. So in other words, you've got to pay more in a proposal because the creditors are waiting a longer period of time. But specifically related to an RSP, if you wait a few months and therefore your contributions in an RSP are non-exempt in bankruptcy, sorry if I'm losing anybody here, but those will factor into what you pay in a proposal. So you still get to keep your RSP, but you'd have to cover what you otherwise would have had to pay on the RSP contributions last 12 in a bankruptcy had you done a bankruptcy instead.
Yeah, and conceptually it's pretty simple. If we figure out how much you would have to pay or lose in a bankruptcy,
and then
I've made $5,000 in contributions to my RSP in the last year. While the bankruptcy is, I'm going to lose $5,000 then. Right. So the proposal has to be something more than $5,000.
7 or 10 or something. You
7 or 10
the pot for the creditors so that they'll take it.
Right. Yeah. And in a bankruptcy, you pay based on your income. The more you make, the more you pay. Okay, so we make sure the proposal is a little higher, but we can drag it out over a 5-year period. Yeah. So that's the key. And I mean, I'm sure this has happened twice already this week to both you and me, that someone comes in and says, I've been struggling to stay afloat for the last 2 or 3 years. Yep. I've now cashed in all my RSPs and there's nothing left. Right. Now I have to do something. It's like,
yeah, and that's the dangerous bit, is that now you've wiped out what you did have as a potential future nest egg, however modest or big it may be, and you got a tax problem.
Yep.
And you didn't solve all your debt problems.
Yeah,
so that's, as you said, probably the most dangerous step is where people start cashing assets, right? You sell a car, you cash it an RSP. Not many of those are advisable. And I always think that if somebody had come in 12 months before and put all this in front of me, I could have said, okay, well, here's the best scenario for you in terms of an insolvency proceeding where you pay the least, your assets are affected the least, but people don't think that way, right?
No, and frankly, it's admirable. You tried to pay these debts off. That's a good thing. So we're not criticizing you for it. We're just saying that if cashing in all your RSPs doesn't solve your problem, then you've got to look for other alternatives. So if you've got $20,000 worth of debt, $100,000 in your RSPs, fine. Cash in $30,000 or $40,000, pay them off. Okay, I'm not going to quibble with that.
Yeah.
But it's the people who have $50,000 in debt, $20,000 in their RSP. Right. They cash it all in. It's not enough. Now they've got a tax hit.
Yeah.
And so they come in to see us, and their debts are actually higher than they might have been a year or two. Yeah. And now we got Revenue Canada to deal with because you got all this tax debt.
And some of it's based on age, right? Like if you only have 5 or 10 years left in the workforce, wiping your RSP out is probably not a great idea. If you're in your 20s and you got 30,000 in there, if you don't touch it, or even if you do touch it, you still got time to recover, right?
Yeah, and if you're 30 years old and you've already got a lot in your RSP, you can probably recover pretty quickly because you've got earning capacity.
Yeah, you sure can. Yeah.
So we've gone through the first 3 stages. And these are the stages, in most cases, before people even come in to see us.
For sure.
The 4th stage is depression, and you already said it. People come into our office, and you can tell by their shoulders.
Yeah, posture.
Because they're down.
Posture, bags under their eyes, depressed look on their face, right? Very twitchy, right? It's all the classic symptoms of someone who is completely stressed out.
Yeah, they're down.
Yeah.
They're speaking probably quietly. They're kind of, looking down, and they're just
shifting in their seat. And
they're just, they don't want to be here, but they know they have to be here.
Yeah.
And we're happy when those people come in, because great, now we can get to the final stage, which is fixing it up. So if you are seeing in yourself or in your friends that kind of thing, then okay, it's certainly the time to reach out for help.
And sometimes that's actually how this stuff gets initiated. Someone says to a friend or a family member, look, something's clearly bothering you. And so somebody has that sort of intervention talk. And oftentimes they'll bring them in, especially if it's a family member. Friends, a little bit less, but, I'll have daughters bringing their dads in, or spouses bringing their other spouse in, or whatever, or parents bring their kids in is actually more common, probably, adult kids. And so, but you need almost somebody to say, okay, look, this can't be a stranger thing. It has to be a trusted individual, right? A family, or a longtime accountant, or somebody who says, you got to deal with this, get in to see somebody.
Yep. And every single one of those things you said, we've seen this week already.
Oh, yeah.
We've had...
it's Thursday, so we've seen that lots. If it was Tuesday, we'd already have seen it anyway.
That's right. We've had daughters bringing in parents.
Yes, we've
had parents bringing in kids. So I think...
We've had two buddies bringing in a wayward friend.
Yep.
And finally they, because these two guys were kind of financially savvy, and they could tell that their buddy was kind of underground for a while, and they said, okay, dude, let's get in there and talk to somebody.
Yeah, because he had finally gotten to the stage where he knew he had to do something. Yeah. So I think it's a great point that you want to be keeping an eye on your friends and family.
Yep.
And if you notice that there have been changes in their behavior, if you see that they're kind of down, if you see that, they used to, like to come out for dinner with you, and now they're not coming out for dinner with you, then you want to. So how do you actually approach that then?
Well, it's awkward. I get that it's awkward, but I think you have to remember that if you are at the point of recognizing something like that in somebody that's significant, they will probably thank you for bringing it up. Yeah. Like, it might not be the best conversation, right? Like it's a matter of how do you broach it, maybe. Yeah. But once you do it, I think they will be eternally grateful that you made them sit down and talk to somebody. Because a lot of the times when you hear about, I hate to drift to this, but like when you hear about suicides, it's like, well, nobody ever talked to them, right? And so that's an extreme example from debt, but it's still like it's trouble, right? And nobody wants to talk about trouble. So if you can kind of broach that veil and get somebody to sit down and say, they'll probably spill.
Yeah, and I think the person who is going through the debt problem or any other problems, they're in a bubble.
Yeah.
And they don't really realize it's hard to see the rest of the world when you're in a bubble.
Yeah.
And so
you need pride issues.
Well, you need someone outside of the bubble to say, I've been watching you, I've known you for years, and I can see that something's changing.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got two young kids. Yeah. You don't notice them growing because you see them every day.
And then when the relatives come, they're like, "Whoa,
he shot up a foot."
Yeah.
So it's you don't see it. You don't see it in yourself on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
So I think you have to watch out.
Yep.
The fifth stage then is acceptance.
Yes.
And this is, well, in a lot of cases, people have to get to the fifth stage before they even come in to see us.
Yeah, you might see some at the fourth, yes, but certainly the fifth is what drives them in.
And you can tell the difference because some people come in and they say, you know what, I want to do a proposal.
Yeah.
And, okay, well, why? Well, I've been on your website, Hoyes.com. I've read through all the stuff, and I understand what, and they give you the complete.
Yep.
And I'm going, wow. Okay.
Well, we just saved 20 minutes.
Yeah, this is going to be really quick then. What do you think we should offer? And in a lot of cases, they can pretty much nail that answer too.
Yes. And for the most part, though, they come in and they sit down and they say, I got a problem. And you say, okay, give me the 30,000-foot view. What's going on? Just, start anywhere you like. Make them comfortable. And then they start to talk. And you open-ended, because then that way they can go whatever way they want. You still find everything out. But I think they've already done loads of soul searching by this stage. They're not in here deciding, should I do something? They're in here saying, I got to do something. I'm not sure what, right? Like, it depends, as you said, the level of research they've done, right? Some of them have researched everything. Others have just have zero. And so, at this point, it's not deciding you have to do something. It's directing them to what's the best thing you really should be doing here, whether it's something with us or not. Sometimes it's not.
Right. And I had a guy in yesterday and I always ask an open-ended question to start.
Yeah.
So, what can I do for you?
Yep.
And of course, I know you're here because you have debts.
Yeah.
But, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'd like to know what my options are.
Right.
Okay. So we talked and whatnot. And I'm going through the options, and he said, well, what I'd like to do is a consumer proposal.
Right.
So he had already decided that he wanted to hear, okay, that's perfectly reasonable, and that's what we do. So walk us through how that would typically work then. So someone comes in, sits down with you, And you're the same as me, give me the big picture view of it.
Yep. Well, they oftentimes they will tell you a story. Like they don't say, here are my 20 debts. Like we'll get there. But I think it's best when they back up and they say, okay, I went through a really bad breakup 2 years ago and then my dad died. And that and you hear this, they're not all that dramatic as far as like ticking all the kind of the, bad things happening to you boxes. But if they start telling you the background first, I think that's best because then we'll get to the debt, right? Like that's the nuts and bolts. But at first, let's hear what you've been through because that's them spilling and saying, okay, right? And also I think that makes them feel better because they've said like, I didn't just do this, right? This wasn't like, because I would say 99% of the people we see have not run up credit nefariously. In other words, they haven't gone out and done it, with the intention of, I'm going to go blow $100,000 in high interest credit card debt and file a proposal or bankruptcy and screw the system. That's not what people do when they come in to see us. It's always something's happened, right? So open-ended question, they start talking. Eventually we get to the nuts and bolts and the financial stuff. And I think that's better for them because they now know that what happened, right?
And then we get to the financial stuff.
Sure we do, yeah.
So, but you're right. At that first meeting, we're more interested in the big picture. So I don't say, let's go through every single person you owe money to and write down to the penny what you owe.
Yeah.
Give me the ballpark number.
Yeah, there's no point doing that at that stage.
It's let's see if we can come up
even
with
you get to that at the end of that meeting, or halfway through it. But it's really important to get the big scope of what's happened to this person, because then I think you can understand a lot better, what they're thinking, how they felt, and I think that's critical.
Yeah, and the key pieces of information we then need to know from a financial point of view are things like, okay, who do you owe money to?
Yeah.
How much comes in every month?
Yep. What do you own?
What do you own?
What did you own recently? Like, have you liquidated anything? Like, did you sell off a house? Did you go run up a home equity line of credit? Like that kind of stuff. So what transactions have you done in the last little while?
And I always like to find out, because you're right. In typical fashion, they move through these stages and it takes 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
So why are you here today?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's changed?
And so what got you in here now? And when was the first sort of indication of trouble? Right.
And what are the common answers to that question as to why they're here now as opposed to yesterday?
So either they've hit the wall on credit, which we're seeing more commonly in the last 6 to 12 months because banks are starting to kind of tighten things up and whatnot. We didn't see that for a lot of years because, everybody's just credit, let's go nuts.
It's all good.
Right. So we're seeing that more now, but also again, either a family person has said, you've got to do something about this, or they're starting to either, as I said, lose options as far as credit goes because they've been living on credit for so long, then now the tap's turned off, or something else has happened like a wage garnishee, or, maybe they're just, a lot of people I see are recognize their psychosomatic symptoms too. It's like, I can't sleep in the last 2 months. So, you went 2 years using credit and, robbing Peter to pay Paul or whatever, and you were sleeping because at least you were keeping the wolves at bay, right? But now you're in a later stage, and now you're saying, okay, I can't sleep, I can't concentrate, it's starting to affect my work, and that, I think, brings a lot of people into
relationships, health, the whole bit.
Noticing things that are important, like vitally important to you. Like you said, my friends don't want to hang out with me anymore, like that kind of stuff happens, right?
And so they come in and we go through the options with them. And, a significant number of the people who come in here, we don't end up filing a proposal, or in fact, well over half.
Yeah, I had two yesterday where it didn't make sense. Yep. But now they know they can do that. And we talked about other tactics, right? Like I said, okay, well, here's a couple things you should consider. And because of those specific situations, it made more sense to wait 4 or 6 months to do a few various other things without getting into the details before even doing anything. So, we're going to get back in touch in the fall and see if that worked out better. And
I had a guy in yesterday who he's got a bunch of debt and, he'd gone through some job loss and everything, but he's got a job interview in a day, which he's pretty sure he's going to get. Yeah. Okay, so you're going to be under a bit of stress for a few months, but you're going to be making enough money that you're going to be able to take care of this.
Yeah, I had a guy who, so he had to move, so he's moving. That takes time and money, as we've talked about recently. He's got a job where it's full commission. It's not starting yet. So he's got about a month before he even starts that job. And I said to him, in a full commission job, you should probably get 2 or 3 months at least under your belt to see kind of how you're doing, because on commission you don't really flourish until 6 months, 12 months later when you get used to it. So it probably doesn't make sense to do anything until you're kind of steady, right? And okay, I can make at least this much in a month, but I could probably make a lot more. Well, we're not going to know that right now, right? So this guy, again, it was like, get moved. Get your job started and established. And so, it's probably 4 or 5, 6 months before it makes sense to do something.
I think people who we meet with fall into those two categories. Some people, it's, you know what?
Oh, yeah.
I got to do this.
Yesterday's better.
And we have had people who come in on a Monday and they're signing the paperwork on Tuesday.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Because they know what they have to do. They bring all their stuff, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
It's also very common, though, that it will be 6 months later that they actually sign the paperwork.
Yeah.
And we're big believers in doing the thing that's right at the right time.
For that person.
Yeah. So your example of, let's make sure the job is stable.
Yeah, because this guy came in, thought he was signing for sure in the next week or two. And I said, well, we can do that. Okay. And I gave him all the reasons why we should hold on. And he realized that was actually a better move for him. I mean, I'll sign you tomorrow if you want, but I don't want you entering into an engagement that would make more sense if you did it a few months from now.
Yeah.
Right.
And that way you know what's right. And of course we keep in touch with you throughout the whole process.
Yeah.
So, okay, you got to get your taxes filed. Great. Yeah. Let's do that. We'll talk to you again.
Give you a checklist, right?
Give you a checklist.
Same, this guy, that was the other thing he had to do, catch up on tax arrears. Well, one of his big creditors in his potential proposal is CRA. Well, I know from doing these, and you do, that CRA is going to ask him to be current in the proposal anyway. So why not make CRA happy? They say, okay, look, the guy's done 4 years worth of taxes in the last 2 months. We know he's a pretty good guy because he's trying, right? Mm-hmm. And that stuff matters with CRA, right?
Yeah. If we're going to do a proposal, let's make sure it works.
Yeah.
And let's
make sure the creditors are happy because you need them to vote for you.
That's right. Let's set this up. And CRA is a great example of the final straw.
Yeah, sure is.
I didn't file my taxes for 4 years. I finally decided I need to get back on track. I filed them. Oh, guess what? Now they're yelling and screaming at me. So it's, but again, they will not vote in favor of a proposal if there's 4 years worth of taxes that haven't been done because they don't know how much you owe.
Yeah, they want you to be current. They want you to be on, up to date while they have your attention, right?
Well, and things like opening a new bank account.
Yep. Do that every day.
I bank at ABC, so you better open a new one because you don't want them dipping into your account. So there's a whole bunch of things that we set up. So, okay, so concluding comments then. Do you have any kind of overarching comments on
I guess like backing up from this and saying, okay, what are the 5 stages? Well, I think the first 1 or 2 is perfectly normal human behavior. Right? It's not a lot you can do there. If you're in a lot of trouble, you're going to deny things and whatever. But I think when you get to stage 3 and 4, you got a little bit more control there than you think. Like the bargaining thing, that's where, as you said, Doug, you can get yourself into way further trouble by making bad moves, right? So this is where even if you don't talk to a trustee, talk to an accountant, talk to a lawyer, somebody who knows something about money or what, to get an idea of, okay, because you don't have to be a trustee to know that cashing RSPs affects your taxes. So even if you skip that problem, you've given yourself less problems down the road and more options, right? So I would say the bargaining and the depression bit, keep an eye on your friends, as you said, keep an eye on your family, right? Like notice things that are different. If someone is acting out of the ordinary, there's a reason, and then figure it out, and don't be afraid to intervene because a lot of times people could have come in earlier and saved a lot of money and time and stress.
Yep, and it costs nothing to talk to us, so we can tell you that you know what, in your case maybe you should cash in the RSP.
Yeah, free consultation. You can find out all kinds of stuff like.
Yeah, and then at least you're being informed. Yeah. And I guess that's the reason we did this podcast today was that there are mistakes people make that
before they come in.
That are kind of obvious ones. And cashing in a bunch of assets is one of them.
Yep.
Making deals that you can't support. Yeah, because
time is the enemy of debt. Mm-hmm. I don't know who said that. Maybe it was me.
I think you just said
maybe
it.
Maybe I did. Maybe it's my thing. I'll work on that.
It's your thing now.
Yeah, I'll trademark it. So, But the more time goes by once you've got debt, the worse it is for you, regardless. Either the banks are making more interest off you, or you're spiraling into this depression thing and having your life unravel. So usually when you're in trouble, it's better to do something sooner than later.
Yeah, and that's how you solve the problem. Yeah. So there you go. So we talked about the 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And people don't go through them all in the same order, and some are more important than others, but don't get to the point where you're making rash decisions that are going to come back to bite you. The sooner you deal with the problems, the better.
For sure, yeah.
Excellent. Scott, thanks very
Doug.
much for being here.
Okay.
That is our show for today. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.